All right, we're ready to begin Basics of Biblical Hebrew, Chapter 6. Oh, you know what? I didn't get my pen ready. I thought I had everything all set, and so I'm just visiting, and let's see if we can check it out here. Can't teach without a pen. There we go. Yeah. All right. So now we'll start. So we'll start off with modern phrases, and we'll see if there's any questions on the workbook, and we can even go over the translations if you like. Then we're going to be looking at Chapter 6 about prepositions, and then we'll go over the vocabulary. So for modern phrases, you already know shalom. Shalom is, of course, it means peace, but it's also just used for hello or goodbye. That doesn't always mean peace. In fact, sometimes it just means well-being. So it's kind of versatile on that. But the root of it there is is peace. So if you say, you walk up to somebody, say shalom, they say shalom. Then you could say, my name is, you say shmi. Shmi is common first person common form. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or woman. So I say shmi Bruce, but if Bonnie said it, she'd say shmi Bonnie. So it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, shmi. My name is, so shmi Bruce. My name is Bruce. Then if you ask them what their name is, ma means what. And then if you're talking to a man, you'd say shimcha, ma shimcha. What is the name of you? What is your name? Ma shimcha. If you're talking to a woman, then you'd say ma shemech, ma shemech, the feminine form. We will be studying pronominal suffixes, and we'll get into all these: first person, second person masculine, second person feminine. That's in a future chapter. You don't have to fret about it now. Just teaching. They still use those. Just teaching you modern phrases here. Now, if you're talking about somebody, then you say Shmo. If you're talking about a man, say Shmo Perry. His name is Perry. Shmo Perry. Her name, I'd say Shema Summer, or Shema Bonnie. Her name is Summer. Her name is Bonnie. Shema. So those are some modern phrases that can be used. I'll clear that off in case somebody wants to take a screenshot of it or something from the recording. Once I get the recordings up, I should be able to get those up in a more timely manner now. So are there any questions about the workbook?
Hey Bruce,
Yes?
on page 20, number 4, just to make sure that I'm on the right track. So since that's a hatef vowel, then the vav would have the same vowel just without the hatef, correct?
Right. So it'd be a segol, vav, segol,
Yes.
and then the aleph would be a reduced segol, and then the
Okay.
dalet would have the holum vowel, and then the final form mem.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right track with that
Yes,
one.
you are. That's
Okay.
right. It,
Thank you.
it'll mirror the vowel part of the reduced vowel. Any
Okay.
other, any other questions? Well, since the answer key does not give you translations, or at least I don't think it probably has the translations on page 21, let's just go over those. So number 1 is taken from Genesis 2:1, says Hashemayim v'ha'aretz. And that's the heavens and the earth. And sometimes eretz is land, but sometimes it's earth, context. You have to go by context. Number 2, Baha Torah, Baha Mitzvah, and the law and the commandment. We have 2 ands, we have 2 thes. You can see the Patak and the Dagesh and the first letter of the Torah and the first letter of Mitzvah. So the law and the commandment. Number 3, Vaha Kohanim, Vaha Nevi'im. So it's and the priests and the prophets. We'll learn that the one for priests, HaKohanim, that's actually a participle form, would be the ones priesting. But when we bring it over into English, we just bring it over as a noun, the priest, and the priests, and the prophets. Number 4, Vaha Navi, Vaha Kohen. So it's and the prophet and the priest. And then number 5, Hamelech, the HaKahal, the king and the assembly. I think that's all of them. Yes, that's all of them. Any questions? Since those aren't in the answer key, we'll go over the translations going forward. This is our first chapter, our first workbook exercise with translation. All right, I hear no other questions, so we will begin our chapter 6 on Hebrew prepositions. Prepositions show relationship between two words, usually in regard to location, direction, or time. For example, over, under, around, through, in, above, all of that. From the noun following the preposition is called the object of the preposition, and together they are called the prepositional phrase. But before we start looking at Hebrew prepositions, let's note that English prepositions are very flexible, because in reality, the Hebrew prepositions are also very flexible. I mean, we're going to learn painting with a broad brush. We're going to learn some basic translations for prepositions, but you're going to find that they are used more broadly than what we're learning, right here in the beginning of Hebrew. Greek prepositions are the same way. And so I want to share an article with you. It's from Reader's Digest from August 1970, page 134. It's by Frank S. Endicott, and it goes like this. We have a two-letter word we use constantly that may have more meanings than any other. The word is up. It is easy to understand up, meaning toward the sky or toward the top of a list, but when we waken, why do we wake up? At a meeting, why does the topic come up? Why do participants speak up? Why are officers up for election? And why is it up to the secretary to write up a report? Often the little word isn't needed, but we use it anyway. We brighten up a room. We could just say we brighten a room, but we say we brighten up a room. Light up a cigar. Of course, I don't do that, but you could just say light a cigar. So brighten up a room, light up a cigar, polish up silver, lock up the house, fix up the old car. At other times, it has special meanings. People stir up trouble, line up for tickets, work up an appetite, think up excuses, get tied up in traffic. To be dressed is one thing, but to be dressed up is special. It may be confusing, but a drain must be opened up because it is stopped up. We open up a store in the morning and we close it up at night. We seem to be mixed up about up. To be up, on the proper use of up, look up the word in your dictionary. One desk-sized dictionary, in one desk-sized dictionary, up takes up half a page, and listed definitions add up to about 40. If you are up to it, you might try building up a list of the many ways in which up is used. It will take up a lot of your time, but if you don't give up, you may wind up with 1,000. So, certainly, we have flexibility in our use of prepositions in English, and you'll find the same to be true in Hebrew. So today we're going to make sure we understand English and Hebrew prepositions. We want to learn the types of Hebrew prepositions. There are 3 types. We want to learn the basic meanings of the common prepositions. And I said you'll find in use there are actually more than this, but you have to have a starting point. That's where we are. And to understand the definite direct object marker, which it's not related to prepositions, but there are some things that it has in common. We'll talk about that when we get there. So first of all, to understand English and Hebrew prepositions, a preposition, preposition, If you think of prepositions are in front of something, I've used the illustration that working with Hebrew is like working with Legos, that you just pack things on, and we find the same thing happens with some of the prepositions. So when we say prepositioning or it's in front of something, we'll actually stick some prepositions right on the front of words. Prepositions describe relationships between words. We are in the classroom. Actually, we are on Zoom. I could change it instead of in, say on. We are in the classroom. That's the preposition. And the classroom is the object of the preposition. Phrases are groups of words that go together but do not include a verb. And so this is a phrase. This is a prepositional phrase, in the classroom. The whole in the classroom is a prepositional phrase. We is the subject, are is the verb. In the classroom is a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases should be considered unbreakable units. In other words, we're going to keep them together. Okay? Prepositions have ranges of meaning. Prepositions can be used regarding space or location. God put him in the Garden of Eden, in the Garden of Eden. It can be related to time. In the beginning, God created. It can be related to measure, the cost to be paid in full. That's how much of it to be paid in full, the whole thing. For measure, comparative, in relation to, comparing two things together. In relation to, concession, in spite of. So these are all uses we have for in. You can't just say in as to be like surrounded by something, like you're in a house, you're surrounded by the house. It's more than that. So that's how English prepositions work. Now we want to look at the types of Hebrew prepositions. Hebrew prepositions function in a way similar to English, but not all Hebrew prepositions are like English prepositions in form. And so here's a quick overview. There are three types of Hebrew prepositions: the independent, makef, and inseparable. We'll take a look at each of these. So the types of Hebrew prepositions, we have tachat, bite. Tachat, bite. Tachat means under. Bite is a house. That's independent. It's independent because the preposition is a complete word by itself. It's a standalone word. Then we have all bite. So that's going to be on or over a house. We have this makef. That's what this little floating dash is. That's called a makef. And you can have a makef for other reasons than just prepositions. It can show up for other reasons. But sometimes prepositions show up this way. All bite. That means on or above a house. And then we have bevite, where it's just there's no makef in here. There's no space in there. See, that's the symbol for a space. It's just attached to the word. It's a complete word here, bevite. So that's what we call inseparable. Whenever it's like the Legos where you just stick it on the front of a word, that's inseparable. And there's only three of those. Okay, so we've seen tachat, under. It also means in place of, but we'll get to that later when we get to vocabulary. All means upon or over, and then b means in, so in a house. So those are the three types of Hebrew prepositions. Now we need to learn the basic meanings of the common prepositions. Okay, inseparable prepositions are similar to the article and the conjunction vav that we looked at last week, chapter 5. We looked at how we just stick the on the front of a word, and we stick and, the vav, the, on the front of a word to make and. They're attached to the beginning of a Hebrew word. So if you think of the word preposition, their position before, we have some English equivalent examples like onward and upward, where we take the preposition and it actually becomes the first part of the word. And that's what we have with inseparable prepositions in Hebrew. the Hebrew scriptures, in the Hebrew scriptures, there are only 3 inseparable prepositions, and all of them together occur 38,932 times. You will be seeing them. You will get used to them. They show up so often. The one that shows up the most is le, le. And it usually means 2 or 4. That's where you start anyway, 2 or 4, and it occurs the most times, 20,321 times. And then b is second place. It occurs 15,559 times. And then k is still really common at 3,053 times. It's still pretty common. So l, b, k. L, b, k. Inseparable prepositions. B means in. Now, it can also mean by or with or among, sometimes even against, and sometimes when. But we'll cover some of those that'll grow as you get into Hebrew. Right now, you just want to remember in and possibly with. I'd play it with as the second place one there. So b is in. L is 2 or 4 generally. And then k is as or about. If it's attached to a number, it's usually about. Or it could be like, something like that. But as is a good place to start with k. Like or according to or about. Okay, so we have Bereshit, Bereshit, the first word in the Bible. We see the b, and that's in the beginning. We have the ma'achal, and that's for food. And we have k'achad, k'achad. It's as one. So, like something happened and all the people gather together as one. That's how that shows up. So b, l, k, in, 2 or 4, and as. Okay, bevite, in a house. Be'emet, in truth. Bivrit, bivrit, in a covenant. Okay, so we see the b, here's house, bite, here's emet, that's truth. If you know somebody named Emmett, that used to be a man's name, I don't think it gets used very much anymore. It means truth. It can also mean faithfulness, but true is probably the first go-to. Brit is a covenant. So like the new covenant in modern Hebrew, the new covenant, you say Brit HaKadashah, HaBrit HaKadashah, the covenant, the new one. So we see the b in each of these, but there's a difference here. Why the vowel changes? So what do these have in common? The, k, they all have schwas. That is the basic form of the preposition. That's the way you want to learn it. The, k. All right. But then we have other things come into play, like the rules of schwa. We had the rules of schwa in chapter 4. So in 4.11 on page 35, we have rules of schwa. And so we have here devarim, that's words, devarim, words. And if we want to put b in the front of it, okay, this is the way we want to learn it with the bait with the schwa, right? But we have a problem here. There cannot be 2 side-by-side vocal schwas. So they have a schwa fight. When that happens, one of them has to stop being a schwa. And so it becomes a hirik under the preposition. And we will lose the dalet, or the dagesh rather, the dagesh and the dalet. So now we have bid varim, bid varim. That's why we get these changes where we don't have the schwa anymore, but rather have a vowel. Okay, this is part of the rules of schwa. Still, we have no problem seeing there's our preposition and here's words, in words, right? So here's anashim, men, anashim. And if we want to say with men, the anashim, well, we still get that shva fight in here. It's a reduced patak, but we still have a problem here. And so the vocal shva cannot immediately precede a reduced vowel. So what happens? There's the problem. And it's like what we were talking about earlier in the next question from the workbook. It mirrors the vowel part of the reduced vowel. So the reduced patak, the preposition will mirror that with a patak. So going back to the ones we were looking at earlier, same list. The vite, okay, there's no problem with it. However, with behemoth, notice that the segol is mirroring the reduced segol. Okay. And then the bivrit, we had a shva fight, so it's reduced to the hirik, and we've lost the dagesh. Okay. That's why it'll look different. But in every case, it's easy to see that all of these are in or possibly with. And then we see house, truth, covenant. Okay, yeah, I already talked about that. All right, those are shva. We want to look at some other exceptions here. Exception to rule number one, when the vocal shva is yeah, as in Yehuda, is Judah, Yehuda. And if we want to put a preposition on the front of it, I know we're reading from left to right here because we have Yehuda, and we want to add the preposition le to it, becomes Lihuda, Lihuda. The preposition gets the hirik. We lose the shva from the yod. Okay, Lihuda. You might say, how am I going to remember this? Well, what'll happen is that you'll see this as you're reading through the scriptures. You'll see it and you go, oh yeah, I remember that's the way that works. Okay, then there's a second exception, rule two. There's a exception rule two. And so working opposite again, here we have Elohim, God. And if we want to say to God or for God, when we put them together, it becomes Lelohim, Lelohim. So those are some exceptions to the rules. We don't get this segol, reduced segol. We don't get a segol over here in the end result. But again, this is something I think you'll pick up more by osmosis. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time. It's just good to know. Want to try to remember it. Yes, it changes for these words or any word that starts with a yeah. Okay. Now, what happens if we have an article? Because remember, the article ha goes in front. So we have bite, house. We want to say the house, put ha with it, and we end up a bite. Okay. Ha has a dagesh in the next letter. We have the hey and the patak and a dagesh in the next letter. And so here's the hey, the patak, and the dagesh in the next letter. So everything looks fine. The house. All right. Now let's say we want to say in the house. Okay, so we have a b and a ha and bite, and it actually comes out bite. Okay, what happened here? When you have, it doesn't matter whether it's the bait or it's the lamed or the kaf, whatever the preposition is, it's going to replace the hay. and replace the hey. And so we have the preposition, but we still have the patak. We still have the dagesh, and those are the giveaways. That's the this is called the method of Hebrew you're learning. It's called the deductive method. You look at it and you deduce what happened. Okay, what happened to this? You go, okay, well, we don't normally have that. This isn't a reduced vowel, so it's not mirroring. And so this is actually left over from the article. That's left over from the article. So that's in the house. In the house. So just some a picture here of what happens here. Sade is a field. It's a field. It's not the field. It's a field. It's any field. A field. Okay. And so we're going to say in a field. So it's not a definite. It's indefinite. Still a field, but we see the typical b preposition there. So b sade. Okay, so I didn't say it probably. Sade and b sade. That's in a field. We want to say the field. We have the hey, the patak, and the dagesh in the first letter. Ha sade, and that's the field. We want to say in the field. The preposition replaces the hey. We still have the patak, and we still have the dagesh from the article, and that's in the field. Ba sade, in the field. So in the beginning, we have b reshit, but if it said ba reshit, that would be in the beginning, but in Hebrew, it's just in beginning. We still say in the beginning in English. Okay, another example, Aish is fire. That's a fire. It's not the fire. But if we say in a fire, it's ba'aish, in a fire. Ha'aish, the fire, and ba'aish is in the fire. Notice we have a comets here. We cannot have the dagesh in the aleph. It's a guttural. And so we have compensatory lengthening of the vowel here, ba'esh, in the fire. Then there's another preposition, mean, which behaves a little differently. We can say mean means from, okay? So we have house and from. We're going to say from a house. We can do it with a makef. We retain the noon. That's still there. Nothing has changed as far as, our vocabulary mean here. So mean bite from a house. So mean can be a makef preposition. It doesn't have to be. Okay, that's from a house. Mean melech, from a king, but can also be me melech. The mean preposition occurs 7,592 times. It can act as an inseparable. So we have the makef version, but it can also just show up as an inseparable. And we still have this dagesh right here in the mem. That is where the noon drops out. The noon is assimilated into the dagesh. And so it's me melech. And it's still from a king. Doesn't change the meaning any, whether it's got the makef or if it doesn't. Both of them are from a king. Doesn't change. But the noon drops out. And so this is a good time to talk about letters dropping out in Hebrew. There are letters that like to drop out of words, and those are the yod, vav, noon, and hey. I know that's not alphabetical order, but why are they in that order? It's because these happen to be the letters that make up the name Jonah, Yonah. That's the name Jonah. It means dove, by the way. So the book of Jonah was not the first time that Yonah was put out of a boat, because Noah put the dove out of the ark, and she came back with an olive leaf, I believe it was, in her mouth. So anyway, that's Yonah, dove, or the prophet Jonah, Yonah. But that's an easy way to remember. What are the letters that drop out? If you can just remember Jonah dropping out of the boat, being thrown out of the boat, dropping out of the boat, something like that. It'll help you remember these letters, yod, vav, noon, and hey. So these letters, up there they go, they drop out. And we'll see that a lot. This is not going away. You're going to get used to seeing this. So we have mean plus bite can be the makef, mean bite from a house. Or you can have mean plus bite equals me bite, me bite. And it's still from a house. Doesn't change. Same meaning. Okay, what's wrong with this picture? We have a dagesh and an aleph. Aleph is a guttural. Gutturals and resh cannot take a dagesh. So we have ha, we're expecting the. We have ha, and we have the dagesh. We'd expect that for the, but we looked at this when we were looking at the article last week. The gutturals and resh cannot take a dagesh. So dagesh goes down and becomes a comets. That's compensatory lengthening. So ha eretz, the land or the earth. Oh, yeah, and I missed that. I went too fast on that. We also get a vowel change in there, but it's still easy to tell what it is. It's haaretz, the earth. And it's easy, you say, I think this might be an article, and you look at the next letter and it's a guttural, then you know, yes, indeed, this is the article. Now, if we go with mean, the preposition, and add it to haaretz, so we're going to say from the earth, we're wanting to say from the earth. We can have me haaretz, except we have a problem again. What's wrong with this picture? We have a dagesh and a guttural. A is a guttural. We can't have that. Gutturals and resh cannot take a dagesh. So what happens? It becomes a tsere. We have lengthening of the vowel. We have me haaretz, and that's from the earth. Me ha. But this is actually the mean preposition here, from. For the Hirik Seri vowel change, you can take a look at that chart, and I had to draw arrows on it on page 14, and you can see that Hiriks can lengthen to Seris. Okay. There's different uses of mean. I've said from, we've stuck with from so far, but there is a comparative use to mean. And so we have tova, good, kochma. This is a closed, unaccented syllable, so it's kok, not, this is not an a vowel, it's no vowel, right? That's the kamet satuf. So we have good, wisdom, mean. Here's the dagesh down here. Here's the mean preposition. Zahav is gold. All right, so let's get rid of some of these things again. So we can look at it. Good, wisdom from gold. It's actually a comparative use though. So good, wisdom more than gold, or putting it in better English order, we'd say wisdom is better than gold. So that's a pretty common thing to have the comparison. There's also the superlative use of mean. So we'd say crafty from all the living creatures of the field. Okay. Notice here we have the field. We have a dagesh here. That's the field. But instead of saying crafty from all, we'd say crafty more than all, or we'd say more crafty than the living creatures of the field, the most crafty living thing of the field. Yeah, this is not, I said it wrong. This is a singular, not a plural. So the more than any living thing. Yep. So that's superlative. And then there's a partitive. Partitive means you have something and you have part of it. Okay, and that's the part you're referring to. All right, I'm going to remove that again. So this is partitive. So we have me pre, we see from here, but it's not from. It's actually a partitive. So from fruit is actually some fruit. Just looking at that, looking at the out of all the fruit, we're talking about a single part of it here. It's some fruit. Okay, that's the partitive use. I would say probably from is the highest use. That'd be the number one. I would say comparative is probably number two as far as what happens the most as you're reading through the Old Testament. Now we have a prepositions picture here to give you a visual look at what these mean. Here's all. All is on or over. We have to, that's the preposition that we looked at, the inseparable one. You're going to have that attached to another word here. Or we have L, that also, these are two, okay? Two. Odd is as far as or until. Achar, it's kind of hard to see back behind here, but achar means after or behind. We have be is in, and it's in the box. We have mean is from, it's from the box. Lifnei is to the face of or before. When it says to the face of, it means before. Tachat is also kind of hard to see. It's under. Etzel, Eitzel. Eitzel is I'll explain that. Eitzel means beside. My memory device for that word was the word Etzel. That used to be a make of car. If you're driving an Etzel nowadays, I don't know how old that car would be, but you'd probably be standing beside it on the road because it probably broke down. Okay, this is a really, really old car. So beside, you're beside the road next to you, you're standing next to you or beside your Etzel. So anyway, Eitzel, that's why I said Etzel instead of Eitzel, beside. And then all yod, that's on the hand, which is also on the side. So that's just a picture of prepositions. And here's another one. It's a little bit different. All, as I said, is above or on. And then tachat is under. Acharei is after. This is backwards, though, because in Hebrew, we should be reading from left to right. So acharei should actually be on this other side. Lifnei is before, so it should actually be on this side. We won't make any comments about how he got it backwards. But anyway, Lifnei is before, acharei is after, tachat is under, im is with. We have these two here. Im is with, bain is between. Yesh, there is. We see a solid line here. There is. Ein, there is not. The particle of non-existence. Mean is from. Odd is as far as or until. Hell means to. So just if you're visually oriented, maybe these pictures will help. All right. And then to understand the definite direct object marker, we'll talk about that. Hebrew has a definite direct object marker. It either looks like eight or et with a makaf, et with a makaf or eight. It has no lexical meaning. There's nothing you can translate it to in English. It only has a grammatical meaning. And the grammatical meaning is that it points out the fact that it is the direct object. It's the definite direct object marker. So what is a direct object? Well, some grammarians, if you took Greek, you studied Greek or maybe Latin, you probably would have learned it as the accusative case. So some still use that term accusative, but it's the direct object. The direct object is the noun that's receiving the action of the verb. For instance, he threw the ball. He is the subject, the one throwing. Threw is the verb, and then the ball is the direct object. It's the thing being thrown. And in this case, it's not a ball. We said he threw the ball. I may have read it wrong, but it's he threw the ball. And so it is a definite direct object. Okay, direct object, definite, the ball. Okay, so in Hebrew, in English, the makes something definite. In Hebrew, there are several things that can make a noun definite. One is the article. We can be talking about a house, that's one thing. But if we talk about the house, now that's definite. Or if you said Bruce's house, well, Bruce only has one house, and so that's pretty definite. If you refer to Bruce's house, you're talking about a specific house. Or it wouldn't even have to be specific to a name, it can just be his house, her house. Again, you're still talking about a specific house. Not just a house, but a specific house. So all of these make a direct object or a noun, well, even if it's not the direct object, it makes a noun definite. So when we look at a definite direct object marker, it's definite, okay? It has to be definite. And it's the direct object. It's the one receiving the action. And we're talking about the marker. What tells you that it's a definite direct object, okay? It marks the definite direct object. So it's ate or et with a makef. So it can be attached or not attached. Here we have bara Elohim, and then we have Hashemayim. He created, this is good Hebrew word order. Most typically in Hebrew, you're going to have the verb first, you're going to have the subject sentence, and then you'll have the direct object later. That's pretty common Hebrew form. It doesn't have to do that, especially if it's emphasizing something. But we're missing something here. We see an article, ha, and there's the dagesh. We have an article, so he created God. God created. This isn't he created God. This is the subject. God created the heavens. So, yeah, I already talked about that. He created. God created the heavens. But to identify that this is the direct object, because as I said, Hebrew, this is typical Hebrew word order. Hebrew does not have to follow this word order. English, we have to follow the word order. That's how we know how, if I said Bruce loves Bonnie, then we know that Bruce is the subject because it comes before the verb. We know Bonnie's the direct object because it comes after the verb. If we said Bonnie loves Bruce, that doesn't mean Bruce loves Bonnie because Bonnie has become the subject because she's the first one mentioned. See? So in English, word order is everything. In Hebrew, you have more flexibility. And if you have these out of order, you want to make sure you know which one is the direct object. And so there is a definite direct object marker. So looking at the whole phrase, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Heavens and earth are direct objects. They are the things that's been created. Both have a definite article. We have the ha. Notice this is a guttural. We have compensatory lengthening. So that's an article. Here, we don't have a guttural, but we have the dagesh and the ha there. So the heavens and the earth. And so therefore, we have the definite direct object marker showing us that this is, excuse me, in the beginning, he created. Who did it? Who created? God did. God created. And then we need to know what the direct object is. It's et or eight, Hashemayim, the eight, and we have and the earth. By the way, there are people who, well, they have imagination and they don't know what they're talking about. And they try to look, they see this in Hebrew and they don't know Hebrew. And so then they say, oh, looky here, we have Aleph Tav. That's the first and last letter of Hebrew, the Hebrew alphabet. That's like saying Alpha and Omega in Greek letters. The first letter of the Greek alphabet, the last letter of the Greek alphabet. And so they try to read Jesus into this, that this is somehow mystically referring to Jesus. In the beginning, God created, and then we have a reference to Jesus, the heavens and the earth. And that might sound really nice. And I know somebody even asked me about it. And I said, no, that's not the way that works. I said, this is a definite direct object marker. It is not a mystical thing. This appears all over the place. Well, we'll see it when we look at the vocabulary. I think it's over 10,000 times. And not every time do we want to try to read Jesus. I mean, if it's talking about something about the evil, if this was the evil over here, but it's the definite direct object marker about the evil, we're not trying to read Christ into the evil word there. It just doesn't work all the time. It's nice. And this person who talked to me about it really wanted it to be that way. But the fact is, this is just a definite direct object marker. It's not symbolic of Jesus. You can't symbolically put Jesus into all 10,000 plus places where the definite direct object marker is used. And besides that, the definite direct object marker can have things done to it, like it can get pronominal suffixes. And we'll see that later on. I don't know what chapter that is, but we'll see that more. And sometimes they carry meaning. We'll see that when we go over the vocabulary too. Sometimes it means if. We'll talk more about that later as well. So let's go over the vocabulary. I've been talking about it. Page 53 and 54. Okay, bottom of page 53, 6.9. So the first one, acharei. Acharei means after or behind. Sometimes it just shows up as achar, but still means after or behind. There's another word that looks similar to it that means other, but we'll see that when we get to, that's on page 75. You don't have to worry about that now. And this preposition can also take pronominal suffixes, but we'll look at that on page 9. You don't have to worry about that, but acharei is after or behind. El, well, we've looked at that already a little bit. It means to or toward. And then we have 8, which looks like the definite direct object marker, but it's can also mean with, and it can also be spelled et with a makef. We will talk about that more right now. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and learn it as it could be either the definite direct object marker or if. And we'll talk more about it when we get to chapter 9. What did I say? With, yeah, with. We'll talk more about that in chapter 9. Then we have and we've looked at that in or with would probably be the two big ones. Notice it appears 15,559 times. When it's used with an infinitive, it can be when as well, but we'll cover those when we get to it. Right now, just remember in or possibly with. Bane is between, and bane is usually like between you and between me. It actually uses between both times. Next word, batok. Batok is in the midst. Then they also have some others like mitok, that'd be from the midst. Eltok, to the midst. Then we have k, which we also looked at, like or as. And if you're talking about numbers, it could be about. Then we have le, to or for. Lema'an, on account of or for the sake of. And mean, we've also talked about. Sometimes the noon assimilates into a dagesh forte in the following letter. It could be used with a makef, or it could be fastened onto the front of the word. They're inseparable. I wouldn't call it inseparable because it can be separated, but it acts like that sometimes. Ma'al means above, upward. Like when they were numbering the people in the wilderness there, the army, and they numbered everybody from 20 years old and above. Okay, so ma'al, from above. Aver, beyond, on the other side. Odd means until or as far as. All means on or upon. Let's start with those, but sometimes you'll find like the city that's on the river. Okay, the city isn't on the river, the city is beside it. So you find out that all doesn't always mean on or over, sometimes means beside. You don't have to memorize that. I'm just letting you know in advance. Then when you see it later, we come across that later, you go, oh, okay, well, I remember Bruce said something about that. Im is with. Panim is face, but you see the ending there and you say, well, that's plural. Well, panim, face, is always plural because you have two eyes and two ears and a nose and a mouth, and all these things put together make a face. And so face is always plural, panim. But then they have a note over here. Lifnei means before or in front of. You put it's to the face of, to the face of. So if something is to the face of something, it's before it or in front of it. And tachat means under, below, or instead of, or you could say in place of. For instance, it says, this king died and then his son reigned tachat, in place of him or instead of him. Then we have 8. Now we have the definite direct object marker. It's not translated. Also et with a makef. And it can also, like, it's got oto, and it'd just be him. But it occurs 10,978 times. And that's why I was saying you can't take all of those. Some of them would be very awkward if you're trying to read Jesus into something besides creation or something. The definite direct object marker is used all over the place. Pretty much every time you have a definite direct object in a sentence. Kol means all. However, it can, if it's referring to something singular, it can mean each or every. And sometimes you see it, with a makef, like it is over the side there. It's still pronounced kol. That looks like call, but it's still pronounced kol because that is the short O vowel, not the long A vowel. Not the long A vowel, the comet satuf. So when it's attached to something, it's going to be an unaccented closed O vowel. Okay. Any questions? All right. I did want to draw your attention to the very last part of this chapter, 6.11. It's an short article written by John Piper. And this, I think, is very, very good. I'll let you read it, but he's comparing the fact that we believe in the incarnation, that Jesus being the Son, in the book of Hebrews, that says that in past times, in various ways, God spoke to our fathers through dreams and visions and all kinds of different ways. But in these last days, he's spoken to us by his Son, whom he's appointed the heir of all things. And so Jesus is the greatest revelation of who God is. Whenever Jesus said, Philip said, show us the Father. This is John 14. Show us the Father. And Jesus says, have I been with you so long, Philip? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Jesus is the greatest revelation of who God is. And what John Piper here is saying, that God humbled himself in the incarnation to become a man. God has also humbled himself in this incarnation of his word. We're studying grammar. People go, well, grammar is so boring. We're looking at prepositions. We're looking at definite articles. We're looking at conjunctions. We're looking at nouns. And we have a whole lot more we're going to look at. And yet the thing is, God has chosen. Jesus is the greatest revelation, but none of us have seen Jesus. We know about Jesus and what he's like because we've read about him in his word, and God has revealed himself by using nouns and verbs and prepositions and articles. And I thought this was a really good article of why grammar is important. So sometimes if you're feeling like, oh, this grammar is just really getting me down, don't let it get you down. Go back and reread this and remember this is how God has chosen to reveal himself to us. So homework, exercise 6 in the workbook, chapter 6 vocabulary, memorize that, and then go ahead and read chapter 7, which is about Hebrew adjectives. Any questions? I hear none. So if anything comes up, you guys all have my email address. You can certainly email me any questions you might have. And I should be I have the password for uploading these videos, so I should be able to get that up to YouTube if you want to review the lesson. I should be a little bit more timely in getting those uploaded. So with that, we will go ahead and finish. Have a good week.
Thanks, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Good night.
You good.